as I mentioned, crop insurance is the primary safety net. There's a lot of people that think this is a transitionary farm bill where we will see a greater emphasis on crop insurance going forward. Program elections, again, it's one of those ones where there's a lot of moving parts to what your decision is going to end up looking at. For example, you can't decide to reallocate base acres or to keep your existing bases or base acres without end up looking at what your program alternatives are, because you could potentially have a set of circumstances where you get higher payments under a program if you kept your base acres versus reallocating them under one program, such as PLC, just for an example. And then under another program, it would make more sense to reallocate your base acres and take that proportional reallocation based on what you've planted the past 5 years, as Jason ended up showing. So that's one that's really important. Yield updates to me is another one that even if you're not going into PLC, it won't directly affect your payments, but very good idea to do it just for future potential payments down the road, because you're going to end up having higher yields. The generic base, again, this is another one, and Chuck is going to get into the cotton side of things, but your generic base acres, where if you're not even planting cotton, you are still going to end up having those cotton base acres, or what's now called generic base payments, potentially under one of these programs. And it'll be reallocated on an annual time period based on what you end up planting those acres to. So it's something that's very important. Latest numbers, we have about 250,000 acres of cotton planted in the state. There's estimated to be about 750,000 base acres of cotton. So it's something where it's still a substantial portion. Even though cotton's no longer a covered commodity, it's what your cotton base or your new generic base is going to be, or how it's going to be assigned, is going to play an important role into these decisions. As I mentioned, this is, to me, one of the big keys is how the interaction between your crop insurance and your crop insurance-based products are going to interact with your program, or your Title I program payments. And the biggest key to me for which program is going to make the most sense for individual farms is this one right here. Program elections will be driven by producer price expectations over the life of the farm bill. As Jason mentioned, it's a 5-year farm bill. One of the issues that we have out there is we don't know what prices are going to be next year, or even for the remainder of this year, let alone 5 years out. So there's going to be a whole bunch of different scenarios that are potentially available, and under certain conditions, PLC might make more sense. Under other conditions, ARC County might make more sense, and under other conditions, ARC Individual might make more sense. So it's something where this right here, where you see commodity prices going and marketing year average commodity prices, is going to be a real driver of which programs are going to make the most sense. Crop insurance, I'm not going to spend too much time, but it's essentially unchanged. Jason mentioned conservation compliance and also the differentiation between irrigated and non-irrigated acres. That's also going to end up applying to SCO, which is going to be available for 2015. SCO and stacks, they actually had a lot of the regulations ended up released just this past couple of weeks, so there's some additional information that's available that Chuck is going to step through on the SCO and stacks programs. And I'm going to talk a little bit about wheat. Just to kind of give a baseline, because I really want to emphasize that you should be thinking, when you're thinking about the commodity programs that are available, how that interacts with your average coverage level or your farm coverage level. This map here shows where your coverage level in percent is for each county for soybeans in 2013. This is something that, again, when I start stepping through these, I want you to really think about how these coverage levels interact with the programs that are available to you for each farm you have. This one here again is the corn. One thing that you'll see is obviously in the Corn Belt, both the western and the eastern Corn Belt, you will see higher coverages. A lot of that is due to the presence of a natural hedge. You have enough corn production in this region that if you do end up having a crop failure, there's a good chance prices are going to be high. If you have a bumper crop, there's a good chance its prices are going to be low. So there's a bit of a natural hedge there. reduces how much insurance premiums are for those people, and that's why you end up seeing a lot of coverage in those areas. There's also a few other areas where there's an irrigation factor in there. That's going to end up being something that's going to be new going forward as far as being able to differentiate between those irrigated and non-irrigated acres. Move to cotton quickly in 2013. These are all in the handout, so they're a little tricky to see, but you can see where your coverage levels are in Tennessee. Again, with the reduction in the amount of acres that we've ended up having, you can kind of see how the coverage is allocated amongst the counties. Wheat, again, kind of a similar picture, but wheat's a little bit more of a difficult crop due to the fact that they end up covering across spring, winter, and all different wheat sub-varieties.